Hello everyone, and welcome to this year's version of the 2020 Mid-Region Council of Governments annual event. I'm Diane Gibson, Chair of the Rio Metro Regional Transit District Board of Directors. When I spoke to you last year as the Rio Metro Board Chair, the big news was that we were on track, literally, to meet the end of year 2020 deadline of implementing PTC, the $55 million railway safety enhancement. Let me remind you that last year's Positive Train Control Challenge was securing the funding for that hefty federal mandate. This year, however, the challenge is in getting it implemented before the end of the year. And I'm told we're doing quite well in that area too. On that note, I am really proud of our Rio Metro Board, as well as our staff, for working so hard to get PTC installed in the Rail Runner corridor. It's a lot of work, both on the construction side of the house as well as on the administrative side. I know there's been chatter about whether or not we were going to make the deadline, but if there's a silver lining to all of this, it's this. Because of the later start date, we were able to learn from and avoid some of the early mistakes made by other railroads, which fortunately has reduced the time necessary for completion of the project. And speaking of time to complete the project, we've had plenty of time to work in the corridor without the dual concern of running trains because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that our trains were suspended for the first time in the Rail Runners' history. The suspension, which started in March with the issuance of a host of other public health orders due to the pandemic, has gone on for nearly 6 months, but I'm told it may be coming to an end very soon, maybe even by the time you are watching this video. That said, I want to commend MRCOG Executive Director Dewey Cave and Terry Doyle, our Director of Rio Metro, as well as our Board of Directors for keeping our train staff working through the entirety of the shutdown. We have a great staff, and our passengers love them, both on the rail and the bus side, I might mention, and we want to make sure that they are taken care of as well as they take care of our passengers. Now for some other Rio Metro happenings from this past year that are worth talking about. One of them is a program called Rio Metro Access, a policy that allows social service organizations in our communities to purchase transit passes for Rio Metro's rail and bus services at a discount. The coronavirus pandemic has delayed implementation of this program due to the suspended train service, but once rail runner service is reinstated, Rio Metro Access will provide a much-needed and valuable resource to those who have come to rely on public transportation in the region. Elsewhere in the region, we see that Rio Metro has created more opportunities to support our communities. For instance, this past year we saw the start of Phase 2 of the Town of Bernalillo pedestrian improvements at the area around downtown Bernalillo Rail Runner Station. While town residents will be able to enjoy improved convenience and access to the town's local retail and service center, the plans for expanding the trail system are well underway. This includes a crossing near W.D. Carroll Elementary School, as well as more than a mile of paved multi-purpose pathway along the railroad track, additional lighting, safety fencing, and a sidewalk connections in the area. A little farther north in the corridor, one of our most popular rail runner stops, the Los Rancho Journal Center station, got a new 130-space parking lot last December. Supported mostly through FTA funds, the improvements also included lighting, security cameras, landscaping, additional ADA accessible parking, as well as a new sidewalk through the El Pueblo road crossing. And to the south, Rio Metro will be getting a new home, thanks to a $6 million grant from the FTA. Phase 1 of the Valencia County Transit Facility will include a new administration building, storage unit for buses and parking areas, all to be completed by early 2022. So, as you can see, pandemic or not, we have a lot to look forward to with Rio Metro, and I feel that we continue to make great progress in the area of regional transportation, and I have been happy to be a part of that. I look forward to working together with my fellow board members and Rio Metro staff to see what the next year brings. And now, I'd like to introduce our outgoing Mr. COG Chair, Mayor Greg Hull, who would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Diane. I've learned a lot these past 2 years serving as Mr. COG Chair. And perhaps the most important lesson has been that we have some great communities here in central New Mexico. And I have been fortunate to get to know them and work more cohesively as a team in getting many goals accomplished on behalf of our region. I have learned firsthand what it means to have strong partnerships, and let me just say that they are truly the key to success. The whole experience has been quite rewarding and fulfilling. I've worked with elected officials and representatives of many member governments and entities that make up the fabric of our 4-county region. And even in the midst of something as unforeseen as a global pandemic, I've witnessed my fellow COG board members come together and get things done. Proof of that effort is in this year's annual report. I encourage you to open the link and look through the pages. You will no doubt see the fruits of our labor, whether it is in the many months, weeks, and days that went into development of our long-range transportation plan, or the efforts of our workforce program that helped put nearly 200 of our youth at work sites throughout the region. The Mid-Region Council of Governments is making a difference in the lives of the people it serves. As we look toward what the next year brings to our region, we must continue to build on the synergies we've worked so hard to create and stay focused on the projects and initiatives that fill a need and foster economic development, especially given the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. While the challenges that lie ahead for our region are great, I believe that the can-do spirit and attitude that our COG board members exemplify is even greater. I have every confidence that we will continue to build on the synergies we've worked so hard to create and stay focused on the projects and initiatives that fill a need and foster economic development. Let me just say that it has been my pleasure to serve as Mr. COG Board Chair these last 2 years. And I want to wish incoming Chair Debbie O'Malley all the best as she assumes the charge. I'm encouraged and excited about the future of this organization's decision-making and the great strides I feel the region will make under her leadership. I look forward to continued participation from our many elected officials and representatives who sit and serve at our regional table as they strive to enhance the quality of life for all in central New Mexico. Thank you. And now I would like to turn it over to Mr. COG Executive Director, Dewey Cave.
Thank you, Mayor Hull. And hello, everyone. This isn't the way I envision delivering these remarks to you. But then again, nothing that's happened in this past 6 months is par for the course. Most of you viewing this video introduction are used to me getting up during the course of our Mr. COG annual event and offering remarks that reflect the highlights of the inner workings of the COG from the past year. But obviously, due to the global pandemic, we are doing things a bit differently this year. That said, if you are not familiar with this process, and this is your first for you, let me introduce myself. I'm Dewey Cave, the Executive Director of the Mid-Region Council of Governments, and I'm about to give a brief overview of some of the significant actions and activities that Mr. COG, as we call it, has been involved in over the past 12 months. Many of you may recall that last year was the 50th anniversary of the Mid-Region Council of Governments, and I remember saying at that annual event that year would likely go down in the history of COG as a year to remember. But never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that this year there could be no annual event at all and that I would be delivering my remarks to you in a video. And while I truly believe that this year will go down in history as a very memorable year for some obvious other reasons, I am happy to report that we've managed to not only keep things going at the COG, but to actually keep things growing at the COG, as well as some new and exciting initiatives. If you click on the link to this year's annual report, you will see that the governor's shelter-in-place order did not deter COG staff from delivering top-notch services in every area of programs that we manage. Important meetings were suddenly being conducted via Zoom or through a host of other cyber platforms. Transportation working groups were able to keep working. Workforce services that were traditionally delivered in person went online. And though the New Mexico Rail Runner Express had to postpone service due to the pandemic, time-sensitive work in the train's corridor kept going so that we could literally stay on track to meet an end-of-year deadline for implementing a major federal safety mandate. These are all things you can read about in this year's report, but I want to take a few minutes to underscore some of the major things that have transpired in our four-county region that might otherwise get overshadowed by recent events, which is understandable. As mentioned in the beginning of the report, 2020 kicked off in fine style with more than 400,000 new jobs in our region. We had finally fully recovered from the employment losses suffered in the early 2000s, only to take a deep nosedive a few months into this year when COVID-19 pandemic became a reality. In a very real sense, you might say that we went from seeing the first 6 months of fiscal 2020 being full of potential and growth to witnessing that momentum coming to a complete standstill by the end of the fiscal year. And while COVID-19 brought its challenges, COG staff and programs plugged on. In April of this year, the Metropolitan Transportation Board voted to adopt the Connections 2040 MTP, which is the region's long-range transportation plan that will guide multimodal transportation investments in the Albuquerque metropolitan area for the next 20 years. In addition to COG staff and Metropolitan Transportation Board members putting a lot of time and effort into Connections 2040, this go-round we also worked to engage young adults, people of color, and low-income residents, all folks we have not heard much from during the past public outreach efforts. This proved extremely useful in helping identify where people are experiencing gaps in our current transportation system. So in total, this MTP includes nearly $11.5 billion in public and private funds available for maintenance, for operations, and capital projects on all types of transportation systems in our region. So hats off to those who worked diligently to complete this plan. And while we're on the subject of transportation, the current pandemic gave us an opportunity to observe some less than typical traffic patterns. As you might imagine, the COVID-19 pandemic and the associated stay-at-home restrictions had a definite effect on travel demand, and you can read more about this in this year's report. Additionally, you may find it interesting that while people were driving less, they started walking and riding their bikes more. All 7 of our electronic counters showed that people were taking to the trails more, while bicycle trips were up some 65% this past April over last year. I guess if there is any kind of upside to the pandemic, it's that many were reminded how enjoyable and healthy walking and biking can be. And while people were discovering alternative modes of transportation other than the car, for the first time in 14 years, the train was not among them. In the interest of mitigating risk, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham issued public health orders mandating that all non-essential services stop operations. And though service on the New Mexico Rail Runner Express was stopped, important work in the train's corridor was able to continue as crews remained steadfast in their efforts to install and meet the federal government's end-of-year deadline for positive train control. Work on the PTC continues as I speak, but even before the pandemic arrived, Real Metro started, they continued, and they completed work on a number of other projects, including a new parking lot at a favorite among Rail Runner commuters, the Los Ranchos Journal Center Station. And to the southern part of the corridor, Real Metro, with the help of a Federal Transit Administration grant, will soon begin construction on a new permanent home, the Valencia County Transit Facility. Phase 1 of this project calls for a new administration building, some bus storage, some parking, and more. with an estimated completion date set for 2022. But switching gears from transportation to workforce now, if you would have told me 6 months ago that all of the services at our New Mexico Workforce Connection offices throughout the region would have to be delivered virtually, I would have thought there is no way. But in effect, that's exactly what happened. And it happened rather smoothly, I might add. In mid-March, the whole system basically went virtual to provide services efficiently and effectively to tens of thousands of individuals who found themselves laid off or furloughed, and also to assist businesses that were significantly impacted by COVID-19 that had to rapidly reduce their workforce or expand with immediate hiring needs. Through its new virtual services model, Workforce Connection offices in every part of our region hosted live online recruitment events, offered job search workshops, provided video conferencing for personalized career counseling, all this while continuing to work closely with training providers and educational institutions to connect individuals with education opportunities. Prior to the virtual experience, the Workforce Connection of Central New Mexico developed fruitful partnerships, trainings, and internships that not only helped those looking to gain a career, but also allowed employers an opportunity to get to know a potential employee before hiring them. For instance, Workforce Connection partnered with Facebook's Career Connections program to provide businesses in the region with Facebook-trained college interns. They also collaborated with the Associated Builders and Contractors of New Mexico to address the shortage of craftspeople in the region. So I encourage you to read about all of the workforce initiatives in this year's report. And when you do, you will be able to put a face and name with some of the success stories of the people whose lives were changed by the training and support they received from the Workforce Connection of Central New Mexico. On the economic front, we ended 2019 on a high note, celebrating a $1.2 million EDA award to the City of Albuquerque for further development of the historic rail yards. Once the pandemic hit, though, things took a hard shift from economic development to economic recovery, and we've been in that mode ever since. Between January and July 2020, the MRCOG region lost 33,000 jobs, comparable to the losses of the Great Depression. We saw the local unemployment rate skyrocket from 4.6% in January to 12.4% by April, with only minor improvement by June at about 8.9%. But one bright spot on the economic horizon is that the COG was awarded a $400,000 EDA CARES Act Recovery Assistance Grant to strengthen existing partnerships within the region and to provide more resources and technical assistance to its member governments and organizations. So yes, there is a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And now we've come to the part where normally I would set the stage for this year's MRCOG Employee of the Year. However, because this year has been anything but normal, we're doing things a bit differently this year. We will get back to having staff nominate and vote on their peers for that honorable distinction next year, when hopefully we are all working amongst one another again in a shared workspace. But in the meantime, I want to offer this to all of the employees of MRCOG, Real Metro, Workforce, and all of our programs. And that is a very deep and genuine heartfelt thank you for doing what you do to make this such a tremendous organization, day in and day out, whether at work or working from home. I truly believe we have the best staff anywhere, and this pandemic has reinforced that belief. So at this time, I want to recognize a few individuals who have left the COG for greener pastures or simply left devoting many years of service to the cause. 3 individuals whose contributions will be felt for years to come. The first person I want to recognize is Ann Simon. Ann was hired at the COG in October of 2003 as an economic development planner and rose to the ranks of program manager by 2011. During her 16-year tenure, Ann helped bring in over $25 million worth of investment to the region. Ann had a kind of positive energy that would light up a room whenever she entered. Ann left the COG in January of this year and took a job as the administrator for the village of Los Ranchos, where of course we know she's doing well and wish her all the best. The second person I want to recognize is Dave Pinella. Dave came to the COG in July of 2006 as a transportation planner. 3 years later, he moved up the ranks to become our transportation program manager, and in 2016 was promoted to MPO administrator. Dave is one of those guys who got along with everyone. He was loved by his staff and MPO members alike. He was a hard worker who, at the end of the day, made sure that people were in agreement on the millions of dollars allocated to transportation projects in the region. And like Ann, we wish Dave the best in his retirement and in whatever endeavors await him in the future. And there is yet one more person I would like to acknowledge at this time, who also retired this year, and he worked for Real Metro, a very dedicated employee by the name of Carl Seif. Carl began working for Real Metro back in 2006 when we took over transportation from the city of Rio Rancho. He came over as a driver and was promoted to manager. And as I said, Carl was a very dedicated and hardworking employee. And those who worked with Carl admired him greatly and will definitely miss his friendly demeanor. We want to wish Carl the best and thank him for his many years of service to Rio Metro. So that said, Ann, Dave, and Carl all left their mark on the COG, and we will forever be grateful for their service. Before I close, I want to thank all of those who have put their heads down and powered through what has proven so far to be a very challenging year, especially the circumstances of the past 6 months. I think it's in trying times like these that we find out what we are truly made of, and again, I have found that we have a staff and board members who have demonstrated a strong work ethic when it comes to serving the citizens of this great region. I want to thank you all for your commitment and your efforts, especially our outgoing chair, Mayor Hull, for all of his hard work and guidance, as well as Real Metro Chair Diane Gibson. I also want to offer incoming Chair Commissioner Debbie O'Malley a special welcome, or should I say a welcome back in this case, since this will be her second tour of duty as Mr. COG Chair. I feel I can speak for all of us when I say that we are looking forward to yet another productive year at the Mid-Region Council of Governments. We could not have achieved these great heights without your support, and we are so appreciative of each and every milestone we share with you along the way. Thanks again, everyone. Stay safe out there, and God bless.